So, what do you do when you leave your best friend's wedding? You're excited for life. Your business is generating six-figure months. I'm talking about 1 to 200K launches. You promoted a team member to a particular position. You are getting prepared to host an in person mastermind in a few months, and a team member gives you their 2 weeks' notice. Let's find out in today's podcast episode. Hey, my name is Dr. TK, and welcome to the Abundant Creator Podcast. On this podcast show, we will uncover prosperous tools to help you become the CEO of your business and your life. I am a mom and wife who merged my knowledge as a clinical psychologist and professor for over 20 years into building a multi-six-figure mental health business and seven-figure digital product business serving others and doing what I love. Now, I believe that you can make a wildly abundant living unapologetically while also dreaming big, enjoying life, and making a huge impact. So if you are ready to achieve your biggest goals, then you are in the right place. So let's get started. Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. And so I am sure you heard the intro and that you are hopefully sipping on some tea, some coffee, or anything else that you have, because today is going to be a doozy. And so what do I mean by that? I am continuing to talk about the process of finding team members. You believe they're the best fit, and then all of a sudden something doesn't work out. But you know that I'm not going to leave you in this episode without giving you the CEO learning experiences, because as I have stated in the previous episode, sometimes people just get in their level of fear, which is to me false evidence appearing real. And sharing stories like this, the goal is not to prevent somebody from hiring their next person, but more so to normalize that this is a process of being an entrepreneur. And if you want to scale your business, building a team. Okay. So I have been waiting to share this podcast episode for a little over 2 years. One of the reasons why I choose not to share certain episodes or things that happen in my business when it happens is that I want to make sure that when we're done, that I can lay everything out in a way that you can follow, more like storytelling time. But also, I will not leave you empty-handed without sharing with you what I've learned, and also the process that I applied internally, and also using mentors and coaches and mastermind programs to help me, process all this through. Okay. So I am revealing another layer yet again, as I stated in the previous episode, about team building. So, depending on how long this goes, I'm hoping that I can record this in one sitting. But if I start talking, just to give you a heads up, and I realize that, oh, wait, I forgot that probably I could share more about lessons learned, then I will make another part. But I do want to set the context and talk to you about, all the things that happened and what I learned about myself, and then also what the business needs. Okay. So if you haven't listened to the previous episode, I would highly encourage it, but I want to take you back all the way to 2021. So in 2021, I believe in January, I had this big old brand photo shoot in LA where it was a little over 10,000, but 10,000 included a team, clothing, the location, which we did kind of like an Airbnb house, but it was through another website. That included all of the things related to props, food, hair, makeup, just like everything, right? And it was my first time having a brand photo shoot at that level. Now, I was in high spirits during that day, and I had already applied and interviewed for a mastermind, my mentor, James Wetmore. And so I had received a phone call, technically a missed call, in the middle of my photo shoot. And when I saw the text message that came through, I told my husband, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I was accepted into this mastermind, because why would they call me? Why would they text me? So I took a breath, because it was like a big deal. It was like getting into college again, right? So took a breath, called her back, and she said, I just wanted to let you know that you got accepted into the mastermind. Go have fun at your photo shoot. And I just was lit. I mean, the second half of my photo shoot was just like even more lit than the first half. The photographer and everybody was jumping up and down. They were like, I don't even know what a mastermind is, but the fact that you are so excited and it's showing up in your branding photos, this is crazy in a good way, right? And so the purpose of this mastermind, which was very different than the masterminds that I had been a part of before, was that this one was specifically focused on how you show up in performance as a CEO. It wasn't about logging into a portal and learning all these new things. The expectation was you were already making $500,000 in your business to even apply. And we went against over 800 people that year, y'all. It was like serious. And I'll create a whole nother episode about his main program that I was a part of, because I am now a collaborator and affiliate of that program. And I promote it every single year. Because hands down, if you are married to digital products and you want to create digital product launches, I'm not talking about no download. I'm talking about actual like courses, coaching programs, memberships, and you need execution guides, and you want something that you can have access to for eternity, very similar to DTA, then I will dedicate probably the next one, I'll dedicate a whole podcast episode to breaking down what could happen when you get the right program, course, and mentorship. Of course, when you show up to ask questions. So we're not going to get into that right now, but me being a part of that community led me to then apply for this program 2 years later, because I had joined his program in either 18 or 19, I can't remember. So during the process of me getting into his mastermind, I decided to reread the book Traction by Gino Wickman. It is an excellent choice, especially if you are in the scalable season of your business. And I recognized when rereading that book that it was time that I started to take seriously hiring my number two. So the number two would be focused on the word integrator. And that within itself is a whole episode, because it's more like hiring a unicorn. Most people may feature themselves as like a project manager, operations manager, and things like that. But you want to think about this person as, when you step away from the business, they can hold it down, meaning they can have meetings with team members, they can run your launches. They are pretty much the next person in line if you're not there. So at the time, if you heard the previous episode, I had a main admin in place that was not in this country, and she was good at what she did, but I had recognized when rereading Traction, because you read it differently based on what phase you are in your business, I recognized that what the business needs is someone within the States, ideally nearby, because my vision for our company was to also have some things in person with team, especially as it related to planning launches, planning events. And I just wanted to like be in connection physically and proximity wise with some of my team members. And so I attended my first mastermind in that program. It was called a mastermind retreat. We went to Sedona, Arizona, and it was for pretty much 3 days. So I flew into Phoenix for 1 day, stayed in a hotel by the airport, by the college. And then I drove out to Sedona early that morning for the first day of the mastermind, and then stayed 3 days at like a cottage or something. It was really nice. And so during the first mastermind, it was an excellent experience. If I can find the episode that breaks down what that experience was like, then I will for sure link it in the show notes, because I did a lot of recording audio and video during that season of what it was like to be in a room with like 7 to 8 figure earners, where you feel like you're the smallest person in the room, but you realize that you're in the right place, right? So during that first mastermind, he had let us know on our second day, I believe, that if we hired an integrator, meaning everybody in the room, it was about 24 people in the room, 24 businesses. So we would, if we hired an integrator, we would win a day in one of the second or third mastermind retreats that we had lined up for that year. We would win a day to bring our integrator to the event, where then his integrator, which is a rock star, his integrator would take them out the room and do their own training, because it's nice to hear from another integrator. And I was like, bet, right? So during that time, I had already hired someone. So I'm going to break it down in chapters. So I'm going to call this chapter Upwork. Okay. So when I was seeking help beyond the main admin that I had and my husband, and I had already tapped into hiring a video editor for like YouTube videos and things like that, plus a podcast editor, because I made a goal to record 100 episodes every single year for like 3 years. And so at that time, I realized that I needed someone in the States, specifically around event planning, because we were starting back up our in-person masterminds or in-person events. So I went on Upwork, and I was very specific with who I was looking for and what they would be in charge of. And then me being a part of this performance mastermind, they focus heavily on team and delegation and becoming that digital CEO, which means that you should be working toward showing up for things that require your voice in your face, meaning operating in your genius zone and not just doing shit in your business. And so I was very particular and I looked at what is taking a lot of my time that even though I'm good at it, I probably shouldn't be doing it. And it was the event planning, selecting the venue, going to check out the venue, picking the menu, emailing the customers and things like that. So it was around event planning and a little bit of customer service. And so I filled the position at the end of 2020 and they were going to start, or they did start at the beginning of 2021. So initially this individual, they were hired for event planning. They were on a 30-day trial. They were a contractor. And during the interview, they informed me that they also knew about project management. They had worked at their current job in the same project management system that we actually were using at the time, which is Asana. And so during the 30-day trial, I first let her get her feet wet with event planning and she did an excellent job. And then I started introducing her to some of the project management just so she can get in there and see what she can help with, to be honest, because I was still new to a project management system. The reason why I adopted project management because I didn't want to micromanage people. I didn't want to treat people how I was treated at an employment site, meaning all these CC emails and emails throughout the day. Like, nah, I'm just going to sign these projects, get to them unless they have a specific deadline with a time. Just get it done by Friday. Get it done by next Wednesday. Like, that's how I roll in my company. I don't care if you go get your hair done in the middle of the day, as long as it's not during a time where we have a coaching call, if that's your duty, right? And so I hired her part-time for 10 hours. Now, during this February mastermind retreat, next chapter is once our mastermind coach told us about this opportunity that we would be able to have, I was like, okay, this is cool, but I have a question. So I asked him in the room, I want this person to be trained eventually for that integrator role, but they already have a job full time. And then he asked a few clarifying questions like, do you really think that this person would be a good fit? I said, yes, in so many words. What is your fear pretty much about offering this person this position? I'm like, I don't know if they're just going to have availability because the way they made it seem about their full-time job is that they're not leaving. They love their full-time job. And so he said, you won't know unless you ask. And I'm like, you're right. So before the night ended, and I might have done this I did it in the room. When other people were talking, I just sent her a text because I sometimes feel the vibrations in the room to go ahead and get it done. So I received guidance, of course, on how to have that conversation with that team member through the coaching in the room and the mastermind and about where her growth vision. I was asking specific questions before I told her what the answer that I wanted or the real question that I wanted to ask. And I was really vetting to see where she saw her growth in the company. Now, what blew my mind is the conversation happened in like 5 minutes. And when she replied back, she said, I would leave my job for a chance to work for you one day full time. And I was like, what? Like 2 months ago, you were like all in love, but I do know with her job, but I do know that as she started to get her feet wet and she started to see just like how different this job was versus working on a college campus and things like that. Very traditional 9 to 5. We're very like family oriented. I ain't saying we too relaxed, but I mean, we kind of going with the flow. I'm not saying I don't have deadlines. I'm not saying I don't get feedback. I'm not saying I sugarcoat anything. I'm straight to the point. But at the end of the day, I always want to make sure that my team members are taken care of. And I always want to make sure that they know that there's an open door policy, which I'm going to get to because sometimes some people are not used to that. So I was just in wow. And so was my coach because I had ended up telling them the next day, like, yo, the person said yes. Okay. So I've moved you through the chapter of Upwork, me hiring the person, chapter of let me pitch myself to this person to see what they say. Now let's move to the next chapter called intention setting. And so I knew I wanted this person to be full-time one day. So I am really heavy in vision boards and scripting. I learned that from one of my past coaches in which I have been coaching and I still do some stuff with them, but I have been in their community for like 5 years at this point. And they are heavy on manifestation, scripting, faith props. Like if I want to hire somebody, I'm going to find a picture of the person. If I don't already have that person on my team, I am going to describe in detail what it would be like for that person to be on my team after we've had a launch, like all these things. So because I knew I wanted this particular person on the team full time in the United States, and when I say full time, I'm talking about salary, I'm talking about insurance. I'm not scared of any of that because at some point, your girl don't want to do everything in a business, right? And so I created a script, I created a vision board, and I put in the salary, I put in the benefits. And then based on some conversations that I was having, behind the scenes with like my money team, I put on paper, I need to manifest 60K. I desire to manifest $60,000. I will manifest $60,000 because I wanted to stack up enough cash for this person for a year. Because during the first year, it's going to take a lot to train that person, right? And so that's intention setting. So next chapter, delegation and additional training started in March. So remember, she started on the tail end of December, but she really started in January after the holidays. So some of the things that started to happen in not a particular order is that she was already used to from her current job, like overseeing people. So that's also why I felt like she would be good in this role, because that is a leadership quality that it could be trained, but it may take somebody a long time to learn that over time. So I had delegated also hiring to that person because we also talked about all of this once she told me that she knew project management and she did managing at her job. So I was asking her things like, and you can write these down because these are some tips if you have a main admin person, is I asked her how comfortable is she with interviewing people? How comfortable is she with letting go of people? How comfortable is she with doing midterm evaluations with people? It doesn't mean that I will never talk to those people, but I am building a company where I need a middle person even to communicate with my husband because I want our marriage to still be cool. And she said yes. So I delegated hiring to her. She had ended up hiring like 2 different people at different times for like that customer service position that I mentioned in that previous episode. She came in, like I said, with experience. She started to meet with on her own doing, which I love the proactiveness and the innovativeness of her position. So she started calling, admin meetings with each team member for like 10-minute check-ins every week, at least for a month, so that she can get a pulse on what's happening beyond the project management board. And I was like, genius, because I didn't have the capacity to do that. She also took over communication with my VIP mastermind clients. At that time, we had 2 tiers in our mastermind, and one tier had me one-on-one on Zoom once a month. And then they also had the group mastermind and etc. Now, this is another podcast episode, but I'm just going to let you know how this went after I hired her. I taught her, or let me take that back. I started to teach clearly my mastermind students about leveraging their time and delegation. That is key when you are in a mastermind learning how to scale, right? I also like to practice what I teach. So for example, it would not be good practice of me to tell all my clients, no matter what program you're in, that if you despise something in your business and you have the funding to go hire somebody, or you can go find the money, go hire somebody, right? It would not be cool of me to do the opposite. Like, I'm just stressed out and I'm just going to do all this shit by myself. I'm not going to find the money. Nobody out there for me. Like, that's toxic. So I thought, because I was teaching my clients how to delegate things like emails to customers and clients, somebody taking over their consultation, basic appointment setting in the email, basic communication about billing. Can we delegate that to your admin? Because I was teaching my clients how to do that. I would assume that when I get somebody in place to do that for me, they would say, wow, she's practicing what she's teaching. And for the most part, 90% of my clients didn't really trip because I made the transition and told them, hey, moving forward, this particular individual is going to be emailing you from this email address. If you have any questions around rescheduling your appointment, seeing additional availability, talking about the mastermind event, especially event planning, billing, I want you to email this particular person, because we didn't have all the SOPs and forms and support tickets set up at this time. But I want you to email this person. This is your go-to. Do you have any questions? They said no. But I realized that about 10%, about 3 people that also were coaching with me before this person got here. And honestly, they were coaching with me even before the mastermind had started in a variety of different levels. Some of them had a hard time communicating with this individual and they were saying things like, well, I'd rather just talk to Dr. TK. Or they would CC me on the email. Or they would just even tell at some point, again, another podcast episode, they would tell other people, because we hired other people into my billing department. They would tell the billing department, you know what, you're not answering my question. Can you just forward my email to Dr. TK? And the crazy part is my team is trained by me. So if they're telling you anything, they're getting it from me. Right. And so again, another podcast episode, but this is what transition looks like. It's just not impacting your back office processes and improving it. It can also throw other people in your ecosystem for a loop if they're not used to this, because they may be used to only directing their conversations with you. Right. So we attended at this point when delegation and additional training started to happen. This person had attended my very first live Elite Coaching Mastermind event in Vegas at the Bellagio Hotel. Oh my God, that event was so fire. We did a whole video on it. I'm gonna see if I can link that YouTube video up too, so you can see just some of the behind the scenes. I think we have a whole playlist of all of our events. But at the end of the day, we had a lot of fun. And she attended that event. That was her first event coming with me. But when I hired her in January, we were prepping for that event. Okay. It went off without a hitch. It was great. She was in love, not just with our business, but on another level with our clients, because it's different when you get to see people in person. Also, what started to happen in our in-person mastermind is that our clients start saying, how can we get one of her in our company? I know you've been teaching us about leadership, but so I said, you know what, because I like to roll with the flow. I don't like to have an agenda jam-packed. I said, you know what would be a good idea? And I asked her during the break for the next day, would you be okay sharing with them what the interview process was like for you? And that was very helpful for them to see what it's like from the hiree side. Okay. So our clients wanted one of her, and we made sure that she was available to answer any general questions or whatnot. She also spoke to our clients about us. We started to dream a little big, and we would have a team dinner after an event. And my vision just went off the charts after that first mastermind, to the point where I said, you know what, we should create a whole series of trainings, because I'm also thinking about ways to get her closer to also more hours that would benefit my clients. So I'm like, what if we put together some trainings where you can teach them even the onboarding processes that I brought you in on, so they can hire their main admin. And she was very much up to that as we increased her time with us. So moving forward, after the May event happened, we already knew the next event, because we at that time was planning a year in advance, because we were still in the tail end of the pandemic. So I had purchased a plane ticket for her to attend the October mastermind that was also in Vegas, but at a different venue at the Vdara Hotel. She, I guess, doesn't do well when she drives long distances. My car was full. It was me, my husband, and my son with all the materials. And we're a 3-hour drive. She lives near me as well, but we were all pretty, close to Vegas. But I end up getting her a plane ticket, not a big deal, because we, saved money for it. And back then, post or pre the pandemic era, Southwest Airlines did not do the whole rollover to somebody else's name if you pay an additional $20. So we typically will fly like Southwest or JetBlue for a 50-minute flight, because it's nonstop. At least it was back then. And the flights were $150 to $200. And so just keep that in mind, that we bought a ticket, but it was no refunds. So that's the chapter on delegation, what happened with our first team meeting, and her falling in love with the company even more. So next chapter is on hiring a operations person for our team to help with the following. So before I go into it, the reason why I hired an operations person was because there were certain things that this particular team member, the one I'm referencing in this story, she was being trained for, but there's still certain things out of her scope, like money. Right? So I had hired an operations person that now also serves a lot of our clients. Y'all know who she is, Marisa, right? But she had helped me with, or she was planning on helping me with at that time, financial forecasting, business credit, cash flow, taxes, budgeting, investing, and saving. Okay, because our business had rapidly moved quickly in terms of growth in 2020, and I wanted to go into 2021 and especially 2022 well prepared for more growth. And so just keep in mind that when you work with an operations person, if we're talking about money, the back end of ROI is that when you hire someone, you should have a understanding of how their position brings more money in your company. So it's quite easy if you got somebody in sales, because clearly when they close a sale, that's bringing more money. It's a little bit harder to measure per se when someone does not make sales. But what if somebody was taking 20 hours off my plate with doing things in the company that needed to be done so that I can go out and make more money? Well, that's a direct ROI. Okay. Video editing, for example, if I were posting on YouTube, as I have in my head, but sometimes I just prefer to do audio podcasts, I always tell my video editor, if I was more into doing videos and hyper focused on making ad revenue over there as I could, right? But I need right now in 2024, we're also looking to expand our team fairly soon. And so I told him like, hey, we're going to have to like cut back on hours right now in 2024, but I'm just trying to show you the ROI. But at some point, the ROI was coming back to us because I was doing a whole lot of stuff. But as certain team members are no longer part of our company, that means that somebody got to take over what they were doing, which means that I'm at my capacity, which means I'm not going to do anything that does not have an immediate direct ROI. And when I say immediate, I'm patient, but I'd rather spend my time like serving our clientele, right? So that is the hiring operation. So in order for me to prepare for the first meeting for this operations person, they suggested that I look at a time audit. So we all know how to do a time audit. I teach my clients how to do a time audit. And I just didn't audit the US team members. Including my husband. I did a time audit for everyone, meaning they had to track their time. Now, this is where things started to feel a little icky. Now we get into the part of the story where my intuition starts speaking to me saying something ain't right with multiple team members. So remember, they're very independent. They work remotely, even people who live here. So when I asked every single team member to do a time audit, I wanted to present this information as we were looking at, honestly, giving people promotions. I have to show that we have a direct ROI with the position that they already have, with the hours that they're already working, with the amount of money that we pay them, to then justify how are we going to increase their pay? What are they going to do beyond what they're already doing? And so I can tell inside, like my gut is very good. And I can tell inside that this time audit was not felt by at least half of the team, at least half. And at that point, I think we had like 6 people. Okay. So I informed them of the why. I never have them do something and I not tell them why. Right. But I believe, this is an assumption, I believe that some team members may have questioned if it was another way to see, quote unquote, their work. But at the end of the day, I could technically ask them to do a time audit all the time. But also you want to keep in mind that people who are on a contractual basis, we lock them into hours. So most of the positions that I've hired for, especially outside the country, they know that over time we will move up to that amount of hours. But at the end of the day, I'm training them, so it's going to take some time. So they did a time audit. And what did come up is out of the time audit, it was very clear a lot of people were not meeting the hourly requirements per their contract. Now, to be honest, I wasn't that focused on all of that because, like I said, we were in training phases with a lot of team members and building up. And I'm talking about a lot of people are on our team around content creation and launches and helping me with email marketing and things like that. So I didn't get outright pushback. They did it, but you can just tell based off of people's questions or responses, they weren't feeling it. Okay. So for me, after being part of a mastermind in which we embrace the book Traction, we embrace the second book, Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman, that focuses on how do you find your number 2 person on your team. That book became a part of my life and my business where I live by it. I need to read it again right now. Right. And it makes you do a constant review of your growth in your business, AKA knowing your numbers, AKA your metrics. Also, I wanted them to do some form, meaning my team members, of accountability. What I found was that sometimes there was some miscommunication about deadlines, what a project was or was not. And so I said, to get a grip on what's going on, to get a pulse, how about for a certain period of time, everybody filled out this form. And that's when I started creating forms in my project management system. And I said, at the end of the day, because everybody ended at a different time, I don't want to know what time y'all ended. I just want to know. And then I took them through a series of questions. It was like 3 questions, super simple, just to really see if they needed support. And also for them to start acknowledging what they did well all day, because I'm starting to coach my own team, right? Also, I want you to keep in mind that I don't have no project management system to micromanage anyone. And so that's one of the things that my team enjoyed is like, as long as you can check your board and you know when your stuff is due and who else is involved in the project so that you can collaborate. And if you get stuck, I do have an open door policy. Just come and talk to me. Okay. So let's fast forward to the next chapter, the meeting. So I had the meeting after the time audit with the operations person. I informed that individual that I wanted to stack up $60,000 for a team member. I didn't want to just promote her. I wanted to, and the money person had a lot to say about this as well. So they agreed we wanted to stack up enough money for this person for a year because it can be a slow process to get them trained and I don't want to be trying to find the money. Okay. We also made a plan to save up a large amount of money, a couple of $1,000s for our rest of our live events for the mastermind. We also decided to save up a large fund of money. I think it was like $30,000 for what's called a CEO fund. Now, a CEO fund is very different than my abundance fund. The CEO fund was for things like maternity, because I still want to expand my family. It was for maybe unexpected things that can come up. I'm not talking about an unexpected, like I want to invest in my business and buy a coaching program. That's a whole nother savings account. But I'm just letting you know the bigger chunks of money that were saved during that year, or at least planned to be saved. Okay. So now let's move into bookkeeping. Now you can kind of see the context of how I'm now being prepared to take this person into a full-time position and setting the intention. So we had a bookkeeper on the team at the time, very separate than the operations person. And the team member, let's just call her the integrator in training. The integrator in training had suggested, because remember, she has experience with managing. She suggested, because she started going to the bookkeeping meetings with me to get a grasp and pulse on these live events and the expenses. And I didn't see anything wrong with it. I'll get back to that later. So she suggested that we started tracking expenses through an expense form. Now, depending on what kind of CEO you are, you may not like this. Like, ain't nobody about to tell me like how to spend my money. But in my brain, I was like, I need to stack up almost $80,000. Like almost 100. So as many eyeballs is on this money, that will actually keep me in check to like not swipe my card for things that are not aligned with the vision. See, you're looking at it all wrong, right? And it'll help me achieve my goal faster. So I was all for it. Literally every purchase that I made, it also made it easier for the bookkeeper to classify things without trying to guess and then have to wait for a meeting once a month to figure out certain expenses that maybe she couldn't figure out based off how it was coded in the bank account. Right? Like in my Excel sheets with the downloadable transactions or like QuickBooks or whatever. So we started looking at all the money all together. It was 3 of us once a month in the bookkeeping meetings. And in those meetings, we would talk about forecasting what we anticipate for the next month, whether it be a launch, money going out, money coming in, etc. Right? Now, I want to be clear. I typically keep all numbers in my business between me and only the money team. No number 2, no VA, no admin has ever known the ins and outs of the money. But I knew, or I thought, that it would be appropriate to bring in my right-hand person at some point, because at some point they need to know how the business is fluctuating just in case I'm not available. Okay? So what changed? Let's get into the nitty-gritty. So what changed during this process that led into this 2 weeks notice? The time audits, I believe, made people and this person feel uneasy, even after I've increased their hours to 22 hours a week to include project management and events. I did feel like they got defensive, but what I would do when I felt like something was off, or maybe I got defensive, I would say, you know what? Let's get on Zoom. When are you available? Tonight? Tomorrow morning? What is it? And the person really appreciated that because I'm not a person where I want to sit here and go over miscommunication or just process what's going on. Maybe it's something I don't know. I'm not doing that via email because things can be taken out of context. If I accidentally forgot to turn off the all caps, you feel me? And so I'm not doing that. So my approach is typically well received, actually by all team members, even if they're not here yet. And this particular, anymore. And this particular team member gave me kudos during the meeting because they said they had never worked with a CEO that was so open about their intentions for their position and their growth, that cared a lot, that showed that they care. And I also was very open that if there was any miscommunication, especially on my part, I apologize. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm not about to be like, oh, well, I'm never wrong. Like, hell no. Right. And I encourage them in an open forum, just tell me what's going on. Okay. So bottom line is, for this time audit situation, I had asked this particular team member on about 2 different occasions, because time audits were done and these vibes were coming up. I asked them on 2 different occasions, are you still okay with moving forward of being trained? Also, we had these events coming up. And they said yes, even after the meetings to discuss any type of miscommunication. Because at that point, I'm like, oh my gosh, are they going to stay? Things like that run across my mind just because of somebody's reaction to like, I don't understand why I have to do this. Are you questioning my work? Are you saying, like, these are the things that were coming out that I won't get into. But the person said, yes, they still want to move forward. So chapter August. Okay. Chapter August. We decide to host a CE workshop in person because I was already going to go to New York with my husband and my best friend was going to be out there as well, Dr. Roche. So I said, you know what? Let's have a CE workshop. I promoted it 2 months early. I made a deal like with some of my mastermind students. I'm like, whoever can invite the most people, you get a free one-on-one session. And that was beneficial more for the students in the mastermind who did not have one-on-one access. And one of them won. So we had the New York workshop. Now, because we had already planned on this team member going to Vegas, I decided with the operations person that for financial goals purposes, because New York ain't cheap, it was not a good idea to take this team member, even though they're over events, because it did not make sense financially. Okay. So when you take someone out of town, you pay for their plane ticket, you pay for their hotel for all the days. Okay. For your event, you pay for their food when they're on the clock, and you pay them hourly on the clock. And those events can run like 6 to 8 hours, but we're talking about setup, shut down. Now, what I justified with my operations manager, because she said, are you able to do the event by yourself? And I'm like, that's the thing. I'm not by myself. So we had my husband there who was helping me run events before I even had a bigger team. My best friend was there and she was helping MC and she said, I'll help out. It was a group of 15 people. So it felt like I was working with my mastermind students online, but just in person anyway. It felt like a class because it was in a classroom type setting, but like in a peer space that we always use when we go to New York. And it was only one day for 6 hours. It's not a big deal. I'm really going out there to have some fun, but I'm going to mix some business up in there. Okay. And so I said that I would rather this particular team member focus on running the business while I'm gone, because this event is only a 1-day event. So 1 week later, I come home. Not 1 week later. I'm sorry. 1 week later from the time I came home, this was like back to back. My best friend was getting married. So I'm one of her bridesmaids, and me and my husband got a hotel because he was also in the wedding. Like, quick little story. So me and my best friend have been knowing each other. One of my best friends from high school, been knowing each other since we were 15 years of age. And my husband is her husband's first cousin. So I guess me and my best friend's now cousins. It's like weird, right? But nevertheless, I'm explaining all that because my husband was in the wedding as well. So both, like, we got a hotel near the venue because we don't live anywhere near the venue. And the, wedding popping, have fun. Woke up the next day and I went downstairs, created content, of course, in the nice lobby while my husband was asleep because I'm an early riser. Ate some breakfast because they had continental breakfast. I think it was like a Residence Inn or something like that, near like LA Hollywood area. And I went back up to the room. No, I think I got this text message downstairs Or no, I got it when I was in the room. So I went upstairs to wake up my husband, like, hey, we got to get ready to like check out. And as he's like, laying in the bed and we just like chit chatting about stuff about the wedding or whatever, I got a text message and he saw my face change in the middle of our conversation. And he was like, what's wrong? I don't know why my gut is trembling now, but maybe I'm traumatized or something. I'm reliving the situation. So my gut and my intuition knew from the context of this text message, something ain't right because you could have just emailed it. And this person said, I know you just had the wedding. Let me know when you can talk. And I believe this was a Monday because the wedding was on a Sunday. So I'm like, can we talk? So my gut went immediately to, I don't think this is going to be a good conversation. And what word flashed in my head is she about to quit? Or I guess phrase, is she about to quit? And I started just going through before I told her yes. Like in 3 minutes, I was like, what happened? What went wrong? Was it the time audits? Because I know this person I think she felt a certain type of way. I'm going to keep saying I think because, well, you'll see why in a moment. It's a lot of assumptions because that's what I was left with, shit. And so I wasn't sure what the trigger was, but I'm going to be open, I guess, to call. So next chapter, how did I handle the 2 weeks notice? On the phone, she clearly gave me her 2 weeks notice. She didn't just say it like that. Of course, she led in with thanking me for the job and the opportunity and all these things. But an opportunity came up that she had been eyeing for a long time. And where that was confusing to me was that not even a couple of weeks before this, we were planning the October mastermind. We were talking about getting her training from my mentor and going to my mastermind also in October. I'm a little confused, right? So to look at things hindsight, she said that this was a position that she always wanted. But in my brain, I'm thinking like, I didn't even know you were looking for another job. And that's where I kind of felt like a little like, I don't like this shit, because I'm like, I'm saying like a lot, but at the end of the day, if you were looking for another position or you weren't happy, don't lead me on to think that you want to become full-time. Just say, you know what? I think I'm good part-time. I think I'm good just with event planning. Like, just keep it a buck with me, right? So when I look back hindsight, I had actually asked her, was going full-time urgent? Because she started to not want to be at her current job anymore. And I think, that's what it was. A lot of administration stuff was changing, right? So I asked her, was this urgent? Because as a business, I can't rush the process. We have to make this move when the time is right for the company, not just for the sake of a person. And clearly I didn't say it like that, but she understood it. And I wasn't she said, I'm not in a rush. So she said, I have a job full time, even though it is not as it was when I first started working with you, because there's a lot of things changing over here. I'm good. But then 1 month later, you give me a 2 weeks notice. I'm hella confused. And so on the call, like I said, she said whatever she had to say. And then me being me, I congratulate her. I told her things that I would tell a coaching client, like, I'm glad that you are choosing something for yourself, that you are fully aligned. It was something in there about personal development. Oh, and this is what it was. I had made the joke, and I probably have changed the name to this podcast episode. I had made the joke to my coach, and I said, yo, I think I coached somebody out of my fucking business. And he was like, what? I said, I think I literally coached someone out of my business, because the feedback that I received from her was, because of all the resources that I had shared with her related to personal development, she had found herself. She found her purpose again. I gave her access to some of my manifestation courses because she's part of my team. And she felt like I helped her unleash the next level of her. And I told my mentor, I said, well, damn, I didn't know I was that good. But this is still a sucky situation, right? And so I asked her, is there anything that maybe went wrong? Like, I don't know how I asked it, but I still wanted to inquire, like, where did this come from? Because it was like a 2-week departure to me out of nowhere, even though it was a good departure. Like, don't get me wrong. She didn't become another person after she put in her 2-week notice. At least she put in her 2-week notice, because some people don't even do that. And so she acknowledged that I didn't do anything wrong. She said that she's just been, she didn't say the word unleashed, but I'm just going to coin it as that. And so where did that leave me? It left me 2 months out of putting on a mastermind. She did finish up some of the work with that, like finalizing the menu. But I still had to host a whole ass mastermind for 20 people. Now, granted, 20 people didn't show up because there were some things with like, weather and things like that. Like our clients were in different climates. But still, we had to close out a year with 21 students. I was onboarding for the next year. Oh, let me also add, I had a September VIP experience 2 weeks after my friend's wedding. It was like back-to-back events. And I think this was also an issue. She didn't go to that one either. And again, it was per my operations manager, we need to stack up as much money as possible. And if the person, she was like, how many people are going to the event? I said 4. She said, no, like it's at the Aria. It's in that room. You and your husband and a photographer, y'all good. Right. So I was getting help making these decisions in my business. But again, I'm now left at the end of the year with wrapping up a cohort of students while also welcoming another cohort. And remember that plane ticket, it's non-refundable. So I'm now in the like WTF chapter, right? Like I said, I took it to my mastermind after reflecting. I didn't take it immediately to him. I took it to our next mastermind call virtually. And I told him and myself, of course, this is what I came up with. So these are all assumptions because like I said, she acknowledged nothing went wrong. She just moved into a different direction, which could be true. But these are still some of my assumptions. Did the time audit make somebody feel threatened about their position? If somebody saw that I was making 50K months, 100K months, $200,000 launches, payment plans and all, when somebody sees all that money every month on my bookkeeping sheet, maybe somebody can assume that all that money is, I guess, available. And just because a company makes money gross, we all know if we run a company, it ain't just allocated to just sitting in a bank account, right? Also, one of the bigger things that I learned is that I should have, looking back, slowed down the integrator training process because she was not there long enough to learn the ins and outs of different positions on the team. Because technically the integrator is over all the other parts of the team. And that person is typically the person to report to me. And then when I give her feedback, she goes and disseminates that to the other team members. That's how it works. That's how you leverage your time. Okay. So, also, like I said, I gave her access to learn some things about launching as well. I gave her or taught her some things around digital products. And I believe I exposed her to that too fast because it can be confusing. And to be quite frank, with someone who has no knowledge of digital products, I knew that it would be a learning curve. I definitely told her, don't go and poke around in that that portal. I just want you to look at this particular lesson. And it was aligned with whatever we were doing in our launch. But I believe I could have given more guidance or slowed things down and maybe treated it like a coaching program, like listen to this and then we'll talk about this. And honestly, that's how I set it up. But again, when I'm still over my capacity in certain areas in the company, I did not do my due diligence to slow down those conversations. And what ended up happening was she stopped reviewing the course because she lost interest and that's why I also realized that this may have not worked out at the end anyway, because she wasn't attracted to that part of the company. But as an integrator, you're helping me run a digital product business, which means that you want to develop a desire to like this kind of chit chat, right? About digital products, even though it sounds like a foreign language when we start. Also, I wasn't very clear on her role as the growing integrator person. Neither one of us was clear. I was learning about it as well outside of project management on a basic level. Now, this should have been developed over time because the goal would be if I am gone, they can run the business and maintain it without me. Or they can find a way to be resourceful and run certain parts, right? But I thought that they were still a good match for growing into that position, but I knew it would take time. But I and that person was willing to learn, and I thought stay the course. Now, another thing that came up, and this has come up actually with other team members, is that some people who work for a digital product company may not be used to reporting directly to the CEO. I'm gonna actually say small businesses. Some people may be used to reporting to a supervisor that then reports to another supervisor manager that then reports once a year to the Wizard of Oz picture person on the wall, meaning a person we will never see in life, but they say they run our department, right? I've seen that in other jobs. So I don't believe that a lot of people are used to having direct access and as much constant contact with me. So it could lead to a few things. It could lead to someone taking advantage in a positive way of that situation and making the best out of it and using the open door to ask questions. It can also lead to someone who has all that access, and then maybe if it changes later, because maybe someone else becomes over them, they can feel a certain type of way. I talked about that in that previous episode. It can also create some anxiety for a person, and their performance decreases because they might be anxious that they have to report to the CEO. Again, I don't believe that the latter two was applicable to this person because I feel like she was very open with asking questions and things like that. Now, also, when I presented this to my mastermind coach, he gave me praise, kudos, however you want to say it, because he said he was happy that I had my own process before I brought it to the group. And he said, it sounds like you handled it very well. And he said, one of the things that I love, TK, that you're sharing is what you learned, meaning not stay in my feelings. Now, before all of this had happened, again, my intuition speaks volumes. And I had started talking to one of the mastermind people in the group on the phone probably once every other month because they were also in the process of hiring an integrator, but they had hired one before. And so I'm like, who is the best person to talk to about changes in the company? And one of the things that they highlighted was digital product businesses aren't made for everybody, especially the language differences with like how we describe things. And it takes a particular individual to get used to that and stay the course. So she had gave me the suggestion of slowing down the course portal stuff and really having a conversation with the person, but maybe it was too late. So all of this left me with, like I said, I hosted a Fire Ass Mastermind in Vegas. It was fun. I was celebrating the graduation of my students. We were at the Vdara Hotel. I did a photo shoot with my clients. My son also got his little photo shoot. We had a great time. I also noticed after I recorded both of these episodes that I lost two significant people on my team around the time of events. So what that taught me, again, not in my feelings, is I took this to that operations person and I said, what are we supposed to do with this plane ticket? Like, I can't charge them for it because it wasn't in any paperwork. And you may be wondering, well, why not? This is a W-2 employee at some point. She shifted over. So you can't say, yo, you left, so you need to run me back this $200 or whatever for the plane ticket. It is what it is. So I just didn't give her the credit like number, so she never used it. But because I had noticed that, we put things in place so that if somebody is in a role where they might even go to an event, it is written in that if they leave, they are now responsible for, the fees and et cetera like that. But I also believe that everything happens for a reason. And I really, really hope that you heard my internal processes of what I've learned and not just that somebody quit. And just let me just end on this note, mic drop. P.S. Remember I said I was going to manifest that 60K, right? So me and my operations manager was like, wow. 30 days after this person left, so in September, 30 days before I was going to have my mastermind, I was approved for exactly $60,000 in business capital, and it would have went toward approving her position. But because she was no longer here, I reinvested all the money back into the business and its operations to build out all the wonderful SOPs and team members that we have now. So with that said, I'm going to end this podcast. I know it was a little longer than anticipated, but I really hope that y'all enjoy my story time. If you have any questions about this process or you want me to cover something else that maybe even you heard me bring up on a future podcast episode, feel free to hop over to Instagram, Dr. TK Psych in the DM. One, let me know how you're enjoying this unveiling chapter in my podcast series. And also being able to bring up things that I believe are very hard to talk about. But again, once you get past your feelings and you're actually becoming the CEO that you're meant to be, and you are able to process what did you learn from it, then you will grow. All right, y'all. See you in the next episode. Bye. Fire me up. You just finished another epic episode of the Abundant Creator Podcast. Now, I would love to connect with you, so be sure to head down to the show notes for any additional abundant resources. And if you are looking for a new tribe of abundant creators like yourself, connect with me on Instagram at Dr. TK Site or YouTube at Dr. TK. Until the next episode, create and live abundantly.